Well, do you want to know about Lamberts Point, a neighborhood in the west side of Norfolk that's very interesting, it has lots of history, and is pretty affordable, right near some really cool parts of town. Well, we're going to talk about all about Lamberts Point today, and we're starting right now. Hey, my name is Sam Sansel and I'm a real estate agent in Hampton Roads, Virginia. And if it's your first time here, welcome. Hit the subscribe button, the bell notification next to it, and then you'll get notified every time I do a video. And then the like button too. If you like my videos, go ahead and hit that like button and it helps the YouTube algorithms as well. And we're talking about Lamberts Point today. I'll tell you about one thing that's being developed in this area that might change the whole complexion of this area and increase property values as well. But we'll talk about where it is. I'll go into the map stuff like I normally do, and the history behind Lamberts Point, which is a big thing for me, and school districts, real estate. I'll do a drive-through of some the neighborhoods, and shopping too, in case if you do move here, like where is your normal everyday stuff going to be? Like how far is it away, and how easy is it to maneuver about the area? And of course, I'm going to tell you about some cons too, because not everything is just dancing in the meadows. Well, first of all, where is it on the map? Well, let's go back to that map. So on the west side of Norfolk, you'll see on the southwestern side, there's Ghent and West Ghent. Well, if you go up to Hampton Boulevard there, on the northwestern side, there's like Lochhaven, Larchmont, and Old Dominion University. Well, between all of those things, right in the middle is Lamberts Point. Now, how far is it to other things? Well, for instance, you're about 10 minutes away from downtown Norfolk, even though you're just one street away, essentially, but it's a long street, and you got some traffic to deal with. Towards the Norfolk Navy base, you're also still about 15 to 20 minutes away, even though you're not too far away from that. The main reason is because of Hampton Boulevard. This street gets a lot of traffic on it. It's the main drive between the south and north parts of that west side of Norfolk. And also it connects to the Midtown Tunnel, which also can back up quite a bit too. So Hampton Boulevard holds lots of cars, especially during rush hour. So even though you're right next to Hampton Boulevard, and all it takes is maybe just one or two turns to get to where you want to be, it might still take longer than you might think based on what it looks like on the map. It's also like 30 minutes or so to Town Center, and it's, which is the Virginia Beach downtown essentially. And then to the ocean front, add another 5 to 10 minutes to that. So you're talking 35 to 40 minutes to the ocean front. So you are kind of in that corner of Norfolk. It's not really easy to get to the far other side of town. Now the history behind Lamberts Point, there's a lot here. Well, the first thought is, well, Lamberts Point, there's an apostrophe there, right? Because it's Mr. or Mrs. Lambert own a bunch of property and it's their point. Well, actually, it was Lamberts Point with an apostrophe, but since then the apostrophe has dropped off. There are a couple different stories as to how this neighborhood originated. There are two different Lamberts that people talk about as far as the one who founded and named it Lamberts Point. Thomas Lambert got some property from the English back in the early 1600s, about 1635. And also John Lambert settled here in the late 1700s, which is a pretty large time gap. So it's up to debate as to which one really started this whole Lamberts Point. But things really didn't start happening until the late 1800s. In 1886, the Norfolk and Western Railway was built here on the western side of Lamberts Point. First of all, when you go to Lamberts Point, you'll see Norfolk Southern. Norfolk Southern is the railroad area that's near Lamberts Point, and it's basically a coal distribution facility, and it started out back in the 1800s. They were one of the largest distributors of coal on the East Coast, but in 1886 they actually started by distributing cotton through their railway. It wasn't until 1910 that they started doing coal. And since they built coal piers in this area, property started getting developed in this area like between 1910 and 1920 for these railway workers. So lots of these houses were built in that time period to support these people. And also there was a dump here behind Lamberts Point too. I mean, this area has gone through lots of changes, but since then it's now a golf course. So you'll see there's Norfolk Southern, an industrial corner on one side, and then if you go further north, there's actually a golf course there. So you have two totally different things right next to each other. And over time, Old Dominion, which is on the northern side of Lamberts Point, then took more property and developed it further down closer to the rest of the neighborhood. So Lamberts Point used to be a lot larger than it is now, because some of it now is Old Dominion University, one of the largest colleges in the area, if not the largest college. And Lamberts Point is one of the most well-documented neighborhoods, I'd say, in the entire area of Hampton Roads. there are several websites, I'll put them below, that are really interesting because on the maps that they show, and like for instance one of these websites, it shows different stories that were told by people who used to live here way back when. And so you can go like highlight over the tops of the map, and you can basically click on certain spots, and there'll be people's stories from residents that used to live there talking about what they were used to when they grew up in this area. And I'll put those links down in the description. Well, that kind of leads me to what's it like living here, like currently? Because back then, you know, lots of coal workers that worked right down the street on the railway. But what's it like living there now? This area is cool because it's near lots of other areas that are also in high demand. For instance, Ghent is on the southwestern side of Norfolk, like really trendy area. These houses in these neighborhoods in Ghent are of course amazing, but they're really expensive. You know, some of these houses go $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 and up. Same goes for Larchmont and Lochhaven on the north side of Hampton Boulevard. That's on the other side of Lamberts Point. These areas also start in the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 range and go up from there too, especially on the water. So anywhere near Old Dominion, which is where Larchmont and Lochhaven are close to, as well as down near Ghent, the housing prices are really expensive. Well, the funny part is, Lamberts Point's right in the middle of all of that. There is one drawback though, and this is what makes living here a little bit tougher if you want to get access to those places, especially on the south side near Ghent, is that you're just at least 1 or 2 streets away from Ghent. For instance, Hampton Boulevard is still the divider between you and the rest of that area I'm talking about. And it can be frustrating, and so it's not just an easy walk down the street to get to Ghent. It takes you, not just several minutes to walk there, it can take you 20, 25, 30 minutes, and it's not a good walk, it's not an easy walk. So driving is still important, so you can't just live in Lamberts Point and easily get everywhere without a car. But if you work or go to Old Dominion University, this is easy walking distance. You could walk there from Lamberts Point, or you can drive there, but it's super quick because it's also on the same side of Hampton Boulevard. But I wouldn't say it's not like a place where you're gonna get lots of aesthetic stuff. Like, it's a very industrial part of town. There's commercial buildings there. There are lots of multifamily homes there as well. Some of this was, again, based on the time period that a lot of these houses were built in the 1910 through 1920 time period, where you got a colonial style house. The lots weren't that big, and you're close to work, but it's still kind of commercial. And so since then, over 100 years later, it has still kept that same vibe to a certain extent, because it wasn't designed for just lots of parks and playgrounds and hanging out outside. It's just not designed that way. And just the feel of the neighborhood is just not the same as it is in Ghent or Lochhaven or Larchmont. It's just not that really settled colonial feel. It's different. In addition to that, there are lots of renters in this area, and the property values are lower. That leads me to specifically the real estate itself. Let's go through some tours here. You can see the streets. There are lots of houses in rows. Again, these lots are really small, and it's just kind of a busy street. You got lots of cars parked on the sides of the roads. It's kind of a bit cluttered, to be honest with you. A lot of these houses back, especially the ones that were built in the 1900s, early 1900s, were like 2 to 5 bedrooms. They have a wide range. They can go as low as like 1,000 square feet, but they go up as high as 3,000 square feet. Like I said, there are some duplexes and like multifamily complexes. But since then, like in the 50s, new construction started getting developed anywhere from the 50s to the 80s. And then in the last like 10 to 12-ish, 15 years or so, more new construction was being built. Any place, for instance, that may have had a house that needed to be torn down or a vacant lot, builders have developed in here. So you'll see some new construction or newer construction in here too, with designs and elevations. They call elevations the front of the houses. So fronts of the houses that look like the rest of the neighborhood that match. So for someone that doesn't want the price of Ghent or the price of Lochhaven, Larchmont, those areas, but like that same kind of style and don't mind the closeness of all the houses, or having to drive down Hampton Boulevard more frequently, and just want something that's cheaper, this might be a good place to look, especially because there's possibly some growth coming in this area, and I'll tell you more about that later. It's a smaller neighborhood. There aren't too many streets in here, but it's very interesting because the price levels are much lower compared to the other places on that side of Norfolk. From anywhere from as low as like low 100s up to $330. So on the west side of Hampton, this is the one place where you can get property under $250,000 and sometimes even $200,000 and not be too far away from places that lots of people love to be, like for instance Ghent and Larchmont, ODU, Old Dominion University, but most of them are anywhere between like $150 and $275. So like that low 200 price range is doable in this area. And as you can see too, like there are lots of like older buildings in this area. Some of them kind of run down on both sides of Hampton Boulevard in this section, and other neighborhoods that are already really high up in value. Now, at the same time, while I say that the houses are cheaper and there is some value here and some possible appreciation, there is a difference between living here and living in Larchmont, Ghent, or Lochhaven, or any area around here close by. And so it's not like a thing where you're going to get a cheaper house and get the exact same experience. You know, Lochhaven, Larchmont, Ghent, these neighborhoods are very, very nice. They have large land sizes a lot of times, or they're incredibly well done inside and are in very high demand spots. This area is not necessarily that. So just because the houses are cheaper and some might look similar does not mean that you're getting the exact same experience for a cheaper price. So in terms of real estate values, this is really cool to me. There is going to be a several block development called the Railyard that's being built in 2020 that will include, it's mixed use basically. It's going to include shops like retail, restaurants, local stuff, and places to hang out and spend time with your friends, and there's going to be office space here too. It's going to be a pretty big development that's going to be right on Hampton Boulevard and near it, but in Lamberts Point. So that's one of the reasons why they called it the Railyard. This is awesome because, first of all, it's needed amongst the entire city, but it's also getting put in such a pivotal and crucial spot right there in Lamberts Point, the south side of it. So now, because the property values have been low, like 150, 250, 300, this new development that's being built right next to this whole neighborhood, I think does have the chance of increasing the values of this neighborhood. So because the prices are low now, I could see there being some possible appreciation relatively soon to this neighborhood as this thing gets developed, if this goes well. So purchasing in a spot that has some possible growth coming. People ask me a lot about where the good appreciation is. This is one place, one real small location that might be worth looking into if you're into something investment wise. One of the downsides, of course, is that it's very small. Like, this is not a huge area anymore, so there's not a whole lot of property in here. So when something comes up, it's something that might be worth looking at. Now, as far as the schools, well, first of all, the high school is Maury High School. The middle school is Blair Middle School. And there are several elementary schools. There's Walter Heron Taylor and Larchmont. Those are the two primary ones that mostly cover this area. And a little bit, just a little smidgen of this area is serviced by James Monroe. And I'll drop links below, of course, to all these schools like I do in all of my videos. Now, shopping. This is one of the drawbacks to living in this area, is that the shopping is not super convenient. There are several grocery stores, like for instance, there's a Harris Teeter in Ghent. There's another Harris Teeter on the just northeast of this area, but it's still driving distance. It's going to take you a good 10-12 minutes to get to either of these places. There's also like an Aldi, a Fresh Market, a Food Lion. These are all kind of close to Ghent also. You're going to be able to get to grocery stores reasonably close, but they're not going to be within walking distance, even though it might seem like you could walk there. And the closest Walmart's like 15 to 20 minutes away. Of course, downtown Norfolk is, you know, a good 10 minutes away. So in terms of like shopping, like stores, like retail, things like that, downtown Norfolk and Ghent are probably the two places you might find that you might do the most of that, other than the Walmart that's like 15-20 minutes away to the northeast. And then of course you can go to, like for instance, there's a Target about 15 to 20 minutes away also. So anything beyond the local grocery stores are gonna probably take you about 15-20 minutes to get to. Now the cons. Well, so for me, it's the traffic for one. Now again, like you're right next to Hampton Boulevard. That to me is a bummer. Long time ago, one of my first houses I bought for myself, I was looking at Lamberts Point, and I thought it was kind of a cool place to be. But one of the big reasons why I decided against this house was because it was on the western side of Hampton Boulevard. And for me, I didn't want to drive all the way across town and have to cross Hampton Boulevard consistently. That bothered me. As well as being close to the Midtown Tunnel, which in one sense is a positive. If you work in Portsmouth and you want to live in Norfolk, for instance, in this area, you can take the Midtown Tunnel and get to Portsmouth, and it's not too long, but it does back up a lot, especially during rush hour. So just because it's not too far away from the Midtown Tunnel does not mean it's not going to be a long drive to get there. And the next thing is just the general environment, like the industrial area. It's not the most well put together area. It doesn't feel like that. But that's okay in one sense, because you know you're not paying as much for this area. There's no HOA, there's nothing that's managing just the upkeep of anyone's property, so that can influence what the properties look like. Now another con is the crime rate in some parts of Lamberts Point. I'll show you the Trulia crime maps for this area. I'll drop the link below so you can get an idea of what spots in here have the highest crime if you do plan to move in here and that is of a concern to you. So in general, it's the vibe, it's the kind of the crampedness of the area, and it's the fact that you're near traffic and it's real trafficy there. So if you have to get to Virginia Beach, it's not very fun all the time. But at the same time, there are lots of positives. Lots of speculative positives also, like this Railyard is a big deal. So that being built can change the values of these properties. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with this area as it develops over the next couple of years. And I'll see you on the next video.